So, hi, Emilia Gill. Thanks so much for joining us. So, you're a documentary filmmaker and founder of the Creative Collective. So excited to speak to you. Thanks for finding the time to chat to us.
Pleasure, absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So, we just have a few questions. Want to know a bit more about you and about your work. I guess the first question, just for people that maybe haven't come across you, although I can't believe that there's anybody, can you tell us a bit more about your background and how you began working in mentoring?
Sure, yeah. So I grew up in Brighton and I went to a state school and had pretty standard education, and then went to university, not very good university because I mucked up my A levels, and did criminology. And that's kind of how I got into youth work, because I was at a talk. We had like a guest lecture one day with the CEO of Jags Foundation, who is Tracy Ford, and she did this amazing talk talking about how she'd lost her son to youth violence and how she'd started this organisation to empower and educate young people in South London. And as soon as I met her, I was just blown away by her. I was like, I have to work for this woman. And so I started volunteering. I think it's important when you're at university because you have like the time to do that, because you kind of alone and you have quite a lot of free time. So I was like, I need to do something. So I started volunteering for her for a couple of years, and then I won some funding to do some research for her full time when I graduated. So I was exposed to this amazing world of youth work in South London, and was interviewing girls that are affected by youth and gang violence, and loved it. And then kind of drifted into documentary making because I had this specialism of working with vulnerable young people, and there was like a call for a researcher that could help with a BBC doc, which was working with young women. So I applied for that, and then I kind of transitioned over, not in the kind of conventional way that you normally do if you kind of do TV at university and go up, but because I had this specialism in crime, went into documentary making. But I never really wanted to like lose sight of why I'd got into it and how important it is to merge like youth work and the creative industries. And so it was kind of born last year, after Black Lives Matter, the big protest. Actually, I was just thinking, like, I feel silly that I have this amazing network of young people and organizations that I've worked with, and I'm part of an industry that's really hard to get into, and I want to do something to kind of make it easier for those people to get into those industries. So yeah, I kind of sat down and started brainstorming, and then kind of naively was like, yeah, I'll just start it alongside kind of freelancing in the documentary world, which is a bit manic and hard anyway. I was like, I'll just start this. So I started it, and it was actually loads of work. So I was working like nights and weekends to get it started. It took a couple of months. I have some amazing volunteers who helped me with it, just in terms of like getting off the ground. And then, yeah, so the last couple of months we've had all our mentees and mentors start. So we've got about 10 mentors and 10 mentee pairs. And it's just amazing. Like I was so proud of it, and it's just already gone beyond what I ever dreamed of. So that's kind of how we ended up where we are now.
Gosh, that's awesome. So it's so exciting. I guess, and you mentioned you're going to university and studying criminology and other things you were doing at that point. What would you say was your educational experience growing up, sort of as over the whole period of growing up?
Yeah, I mean, I went to like a normal state school. I was in kind of grew up in like a lower middle class family, so I feel like I had some more access and opportunity than other people, but definitely not the kind of upper class elite kind of drift into whatever you want and can afford to do whatever you want. So I think it was instilled in me from a very young age by my parents, who were both teachers, to always be like aware of other people's experience, and also to like challenge things that don't seem right. And for me, the creative industry has loads of flaws, and it's an incredible industry, and it's amazing that you can monetize from your creative ideas, but it's filled with people that went to art school, that have rich parents, that their parents can pay their rent, and that's not reflective of society, and that's not reflective of British creativity. I mean, we need to see loads more different people in all industries, but particularly I think creative is where it's lacking. So yeah, I mean, it's something that like I've always been aware of, and that's why I pushed to get into kind of youth work and stuff, I suppose, in like the first half of my career. But now I have space to be able to really see that happen and like push for that. And I think that comes with getting older, more mature. And yeah, I just think just having experiences from like working with different people and hearing different experiences, it just pushes you further to be like, what am I doing to help?
What's your role? What's your impact going to be?
Yeah, like what am I doing to help? Like, and I think that was particularly prevalent for me after Black Lives Matter protests, because I felt particularly irked by like, you know, very like performative protesting and kind of, you know, the black square on Instagram and stuff like that. And I was like, I can't be one of those people. I'm not saying I'm like doing loads of like mad stuff, but like I was just like, I need to do something that's more tangible than just being like, I care, I'm aware. Like you need to do something that is going to have tangible change. And that's where the difference is between like supporting something and actually trying to enact like change. Yeah, that's kind of how it like all kicked off really. But it was very much like it's something that I've cared about all my life, but kind of in the last year I've really pushed in terms of like change.
I guess you talked about, obviously, well, education is clearly the center of the creative collective, but in what can you tell us a bit more about that, and maybe if there's any other ways that you think education plays a really strong context in your work and your research beyond the creative collective?
Sure, yeah. I think education as a term needs to be debunked to start with. And I think education isn't just going to school and getting good grades and getting a good education and a good career and a good salary. And like education doesn't suit a lot of people. And if you aren't suited to conventional education, you're not a failure. And I think often you're told that you're a failure because you might act up in class, you might get expelled or excluded, and you're just literally ostracized. And at such an early age, from like 14, 15, 16, that's so toxic to just be told like the way that you think and the way that you show passion for something is wrong, and you will never gain success from that way of thinking is so toxic. So I think it's like turning the narrative of education and what education is, and finding ways for the shoe to fit for people that can't find it in those mainstream ways. So like that's why mentoring is so good, because it's like we pair people based on their interests and just being like-minded, and you can learn so much just from a mentor, way more than you could have ever in school, just because you like connect and you feel like someone's listening to you and you feel like they get you and they share a passion for what you're passionate about, and that is an education in itself. And I just think like to rethink the way that we learn is so critical, and especially in creative industries where like most people find conventional learning hard, there needs to be options for them rather than just being like you're naughty, you don't fit. Like that's not an answer. And that's why, like, you know, when I was working in youth clubs with the organization when I was still in the charity sector, there were so many like amazing kids who had been kicked out of school, and I was like, oh, like what's going on? And they were like, oh well, you know, I want to make music or I want to do this, and like, but my teachers just didn't support me, or they told me I was just naughty, and so I don't go to school anymore, but there's nowhere for me to go and make music, so I'm just going to do nothing. And it's like there needs to be a bridge in that, and like that's a huge gap that a lot of young people are sitting in, and we need to find support for them.
Yeah, it's crazy to expect everybody to fit into one way of being educated or learning. It's almost naive, isn't it, to think that
Completely.
that would work for everybody, because there's no one size fits all solution for anything, let alone for
It's so old fashioned. Like, it's that thing of like, I remember I was explaining like being a freelancer to my grandpa the other day, and he was like, but how can you have periods where you don't have work? Like, I just don't get it. And I was like, this is how like people are living and surviving and thriving, and like people don't just go to like accountancy school and then become an accountant for like 70 years. Like, now I think I read that people have like 6 or 7 careers in their lifetime, because you're constantly adapting and evolving, and you know, something might take you somewhere and somewhere else, and you're making changes, and it's not this very like stable singular route anymore. It's like always evolving, and I think we need to support that and not deem that as like weird.
It's so strange that that's become the norm in work, but education has kind of stayed so archaic, isn't it, that we've come to accept that adults have such a varied, you know, choice filled path, but education is still just, you do this, and if you don't do that, then leave. It's not
or it's seen as like being artsy is seen as like, then you should go to like art school, which is not a space that a lot of people feel they can occupy. So it's like it's either like be mainstream or like have loads of money and rich cultural parents and go to art school and like float around there. But for like young people in London who have other commitments like supporting family members, they might not have money, they might not have access. What you're just saying, that those people don't have like space to sit in those places. So I think I think they're quite, as you were saying, like archaic views, but they're still very, very prevalent in the way that young people are taught about their careers.
And shaping our young children and young adults at such a crucial age. I mean, how can we expect them to find all these diverse paths if we're not giving them the means to find them? It just seems that, given what we just said, I guess we've kind of already covered this, but what would you say education really means to you, given what we've said? Is there a different word you think might be better, or a different sort of conception of what education is based on what we've just chatted about?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've covered quite a lot around the term of education, but I think education, being able to educate or wanting to reciprocate someone's education, comes with trust and support and relatability. And I think that's a lot of things that conventional teachers lack, and conventional schooling lacks, because of, you know, so many things like, you know, stretch of resources, or there's just lots of ways where people aren't feeling supported or connected to teacher student. So I think just like, and that's why again mentoring is important, because you break down all of that and you have someone that's like our mentorship scheme is, all the mentors are young, so they're like kind of mid to late 20s, and all of our mentees are kind of like 16 to 21. So it's like, it's someone that you can identify with. It's not some like, I think traditionally mentoring is like some 60-year-old CEO and some like 18-year-old kid, and it's like, oh, you know, you make so much money and you're so old, like tell me everything. But I think what's really cool is having someone that's like, I was you like 3 years ago, and I took these steps, and now I'm like in the industry, but I don't know it all, and I'm still learning, and it's still like, I can tell you because it's fresh for me, and like I'm doing okay, but like you're constantly learning, and it is quite hard. And I think having someone that's like really honest and real about the experience of being there and really relatable helps to educate that young person about what it's like.
I guess education both ways, really, mustn't it? I guess the mentee must also educate the mentor as well by just the process, right?
Completely, yeah. And like, not all of our, like a lot of our mentors are people that like moved to London for their careers and stuff, so maybe didn't grow up in London, so they learn from the young people about what it's like to grow up there, and like, you know, a lot of the young people know so much and are like, I'm always blown away by like how advanced young people are in terms of like technology and creativity, and being like at the forefront of every hype and trend, and like they're such pioneers of like creativity and culture, and I think there's so much to learn from their like just like energy and like and I think that's what they give to the mentors, is just like teaching them so much about like just being like on their game and like ahead of things, and like I think that's where it works both ways, because mentoring is about, you know, both of you bringing something to each. It's not the mentor is the all godly figure and they just talk down at the mentee and they're meant to just take everything like gospel. Like that's not how it works. It's like you're meant to be giving each other stuff and going away and reflecting on both of your experiences. So
two-way process.
Yeah, and that's what I love about it, because like some of the mentors have come back to me like one of them the other day was just like, her mentee is like 16 and she was like, she is so much smarter than me. Like she's read every single book and she knows every single thing, and like she's so wise that she felt like so overpowered by her knowledge. And it was so amazing to hear that from like a 28-year-old woman about a 16-year-old girl. So seeing relationships like that evolve is just like amazing.
That must be amazing to see, especially for you on the sort of orchestrating it all, and you get to see the observer seeing all these relationships build. That must be amazing.
Yeah, it's great.
I guess you mentioned obviously it's a two-way process. What do you think are the main themes or skills that you want the young people to take away from these sessions? What is it you think that they, obviously they're getting a lot out of it, what are the kind of things you think they're getting out of mentoring?
I think a lot of people, like I was saying, like about occupying space in industry, means that a lot of young people don't have the confidence in themselves and in their creativity to go for certain things. So they see like, and I think it's fair enough, because it, unfortunately, like you do need certain things to be able to do an unpaid internship at a fashion agency, or like to be able to like fund your travel to an advertising agency, or just, like it's not easy to do that and to break into an industry like that. And so I think when the opportunities aren't paid, they take up lots of hours, they're predominantly white spaces, naturally you're like, well, why would I go for that? It seems so unattainable and the process is so long, and I'm not really seeking much reward at the moment when I could just do something else. So I think it's like breaking down all of those barriers, and they're barriers that are external but also influence the internal of how they view themselves and the world. So I think it starts with having honest conversations about what the industry is like, how to get into the industry, hacks, connections, which like everyone is so like awkward to talk about, but the creative industry is saturated with connections and, you know, this person getting this person in, and like rather than being hush hush about it, we need to make sure that we're connecting not just people that we know or we went to school with or were on my degree course, about connecting everybody and making sure that that is breaking down and encouraging diversity and inclusivity, because that's how we're going to do it, is by, you know, saying, oh, I've got this contact here, you should send this kind of letter, and by doing that we're kind of opening up the opportunities for everybody. So I think that's something that the mentors can teach the mentees, as well as just being like confident in their ideas and like having, it's really hard when you're young and maybe you've been out of education for a while, or you know, you were kicked out, like excluded from school, and they were like, yeah, you're not going to be anything. Why would you suddenly be like sick and creative and confident and be like, yeah, like, you know, I can get any job? Like that stuff damages you, and it really strips your confidence, and confidence takes a long time to build up. So I think just having someone that's like, you're sick and you can do this, and like with a bit of like support and mentoring, we can get you into that place you want to be. That's like the best thing that you can do. So I think it's a combination of all those things, but I think they play into each other. Like seeing opportunities for yourself instills confidence in yourself to kind of go for them, but sometimes you just need that leg up to be like, oh look, this has opened up, or like you don't always know where to look, so it's just helpful having that resource in a mentor.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess creative industries, it's so, given the nature of it, there aren't just set routes into things, are there? There's not kind of other industries. There might be a very recognized progression that everybody knows about, but I guess with creative industries, it's so broad and there's so many different ways you can work in it, that that knowledge isn't necessarily easily accessible for everyone, is it? It's something that you really have to know someone who's doing it to really.
Completely.
You can't.
People are so embarrassed by it, and to be honest, they should be, because you shouldn't be able to click your fingers and get a job without even showing a CV, or like. But if that's how people are getting jobs, then let's utilize that to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to get a job. Rather than just the person that knows someone. Like that's kind of what mentoring is trying to do, is like bridge that gap.
Spread the knowledge around, share it. Share the opportunities around. I guess, and from your point of view, we were saying with you as the observer, you're seeing these relationships bloom and blossom, which must be amazing. What have you learned from your experience of working with these young people that maybe you've used in your own career or your own work?
I've learned that it's really hard to set up a project on your own, but really rewarding. I mean, for me, it's so amazing to see, like, not only like people supporting each other, but like friendships blossoming between two people that would never cross paths. So it's like really amazing for me to see part of like the world that I was in when I was doing like youth work in South London with like some old friends from like documentary making in East London who, would never ever have crossed paths, but because of this amazing way that we can connect through Zoom and through just like sitting down together and taking an hour just to talk and connect and listen and just be there for someone. Like I think it's so therapeutic to just sit down and debunk your brain of like, I'm feeling stressed about this, or I don't know if I'm good enough for this, and just like talking and having someone really listen and be genuine and really care about your progression and care about your worries and what you're scared of, and holding your hand along the way. It's like the most powerful thing in the world. And I think like seeing that evolve just makes me so proud, and I just want it to like get bigger and bigger, and for us to support more and more people, so that it should become the norm to have a mentor. It should be everyone should have a mentor, because having someone that just has that little bit more experience and can see you impartially, like not a family member or a friend that's like, oh, go on, you can do this, but they don't know anything about it, or they don't understand where you're coming from. Having someone that can sit back and see you for exactly what you want and who you are and how you want to be, and be like, I get it, and I'm here and I'm going to support you. That's the most powerful thing. I think that's the thing that I've really been blown away by. It's just being like, wow, the connection that these people have, and the kind of just like the love and support is incredible. It's absolutely amazing.
That's so lovely. And do you see the relationships happening between different mentees who then become almost each other's mentors? Do you see anything like that? I guess at the moment,
they haven't actually connected the mentees, so it's all the mentees and mentors have been connected, but the idea is that at the end of it, that we're hoping to do a kind of a big graduation, so everyone gets to meet. So like all the mentors will finally meet their mentees in person, and all the mentees will meet, and then we'll have like a graduate school. So the idea is that they all like stay connected,
and become mentors themselves, I guess.
Exactly, and kind of like progress and like support each other, and the idea that the mentor scheme officially is 6 months, but the idea is that, you know, they can go on for as long as they need support. It just means that we're going to bring new people in for the next 6 months. So
Right.
it's kind of that alumni feeling of like, you know, it's, we've run the course of the, like the tasks and the sessions, but actually that friendship is for life. Yeah.
I guess that must be crucial as well. I would have thought to the mentees to know that it's they're investing in their mentor for a much longer period. So it's not just a kind of a short period and then they're gone and they'll never see them again. It's actually, it's a life, hopefully a lifelong, or at least a very long connection that they can build on and keep rejuvenating over the years, hopefully.
Exactly, yeah. And I mean, like, our framework is really just a foundation for something that we hope has much more longevity. Like, it's the idea is that, you know, that's how they start out in it, and the tasks help them build a relationship and, you know, start to understand each other. But actually after that, we kind of hope that it won't just kind of deteriorate, but actually they have this amazing foundation that they can then flourish together in the future.
Well, that must be lovely. I guess you have to do some kind of reunion and go
like 10 years.
Bring them back together and see what's happened to them and what they've done.
Definitely.
Just the last couple things, which I guess sort of hopefully wrap up what we've talked about so far. Why do you think inclusivity, equality and diversity are really important to establishing our communities? So sort of broader than the education maybe sort of element, but from a community level, what do you think those factors do for our communities that is so important?
I think, from my understanding of working in lots of different types of communities, is that I think this kind of rooted self-deprecation or lack of self-confidence or something comes from not seeing people succeed that look like you. That's always what it comes down to. Like, if you don't see people like you, and that's not necessarily that look like you, but just have similar education or similar outlooks on life, or, you know, speak similarly. Like, there's loads of ways that you can identify with people, but I think it always, and it's such a generic thing to say, but it does come down to like seeing yourself, and that's whether that's in, you know, people that are CEOs of companies, whether it's seeing people on TV, whether it's seeing people in your area that are doing well and buying a car or a house or whatever. It's like, they're all microaggressions which build up your sense of worth and your sense of purpose and your sense of capability in life. And I think when that's merged with certain institutions making it much harder to get into certain industries or to do well at conventional school or to be well behaved or to be a certain type of person that you might not fit into, that's just going to exacerbate that kind of self-deprecation. So I think seeing yourself is really important, but we can't just say, you know, we should see a diverse group of people, because it's not that easy at all. There's so many barriers, and there's reasons why a lot of people don't see people like themselves, because of these ridiculous barriers that you can't just click your fingers and break down. So it comes from both ways, but I think it's more, the onus is more on the people in those industries or environments that have the privilege to be in them and taking ownership of being in them and working outwards to make sure that more people are getting in, rather than saying to people out of it, saying it's on you, just get in it, go on, you know, the industry's there, just get into it. Like, who has more resources to try and like support those people? It's the people in those industries, it's the people that have the insight, the connections, the experience. So I think it's an interesting conversation, but I think it works outwards and inwards. And I don't speak just in terms of institution of like these big, you know, like schooling and government or whatever, but people need to acknowledge their privilege that are in these industries. And yeah, everyone's busy and everyone's, you know, got a lot on their plate, but just to give 2 hours to tell someone that they're good enough to get in, or not that you need to tell them, I mean, you don't, it doesn't take a person in the industry to tell you that you're good to suddenly make you get into it.
Reassurance, I guess, isn't it? It's
reassurance. Yeah, just reassurance.
Yeah,
exactly. And like, and that's the way that to make places inclusive. Like there's lots of reasons why spaces are not inclusive, and a lot of people don't talk about that because they find it awkward. But actually, if we just create conversations around why these barriers exist and how collectively we can break them down to make them more accessible, then we're halfway there.
Yeah, I guess it's recognizing it in the first place rather than pretending it doesn't exist.
Yeah, and people just awkward, like awkward about how they got their job, or like, you know, their mum knows the owner of the company they work for. Just like just own it and say, yeah, that's how I got in, and I now want to make sure that because I'm in, I can help other people that don't have my route or my connections to get into. Like, just be genuine about it.
Yeah, makes sense. Just a final question, I guess, thinking back on COVID and the impact that's had on a lot of young people in terms of not being at school, and maybe not being able to access youth clubs and other sort of outlets that they might have. Why do you think it's so important now to raise awareness and empower young people? And what do you think we can do going forward to try and address the impact that COVID has had on young people in that way?
I think COVID has made a lot of young people feel very isolated, and it's a hard time for everyone, but it's a hard time if you're young and you thrive from being around your friends and hanging out after school and, you know, just being like a young person, like having that freedom and that space to do whatever you want and learn, and kind of learn about what you want to be and where you want to go and what you want to do when you're kind of trapped in the four walls of your home. Particularly a lot of the young people we work with who don't live in very stable homes, and home life might be incredibly chaotic and their escape is not being in their house. It's really tough. And of course it's like, you know, a lot of young people are really, really struggling. And I think like things like doing stuff like this over Zoom is amazing, and it's, you know, trying to keep that kind of sense of connection together. But I think there's going to be a lot of repairing that needs to be done after COVID, and supporting young people in getting back on track. And on track doesn't mean getting good grades in school, but just getting back on track and like being a young person and remembering what it's like to be free and to hang out with their friends and to not be scared. And I think to have sacrificed that this last year is really detrimental, and it makes me feel really sad for people that have really chaotic homes and really unstable situations and have been trapped in the house this last year, and their only escape is normally Zoom. Getting out. So yeah, I think COVID's definitely had a really profound impact on a lot of young people, but especially the young people that struggle with home life. Yeah,
sure. And it must really impact people's, I can only speak from my perspective as a 31-year-old woman, but I can imagine it must really impact just a young person's sense of self, because the things that they would normally do and maybe the things that become part of their identity, they're not really getting to do. And so if they're wanting to express themselves creatively in a way that then becomes a career for them, how are they really, unless it's something that really lends itself to being at home in your bedroom, which it doesn't always, I guess.
And being creative comes with like being inspired and seeing things and being excited by stuff, and sitting in a room looking at your laptop is not that. Like how can you expect to be like thriving when you need to see stuff and experience stuff to be able to like be excited and be like creative? So I mean it's kind of out of our control, but I think we can't be naive in thinking that this isn't going to have a huge effect on on the youth and the creativity of young people.
Yeah, well, let's hope that the creative collective just explodes after in a good way after soon, with just more and more people, and just becomes a massive thing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's mad because I didn't really know what it would kind of look like when I came up with it like 6 months ago, but now seeing it take shape, I'm just, yeah, it's just like we want more people involved. Like, yeah, it's the very start of a very brilliant long journey, so we'll see how it ends up.
Yeah, it's amazing. I can it's such the right time for it as well, isn't it? It's just so needed right now, more than ever. I mean, it always has been, but more than ever now. That's amazing. Well, thanks so much for your time, and for telling us all about you and about your work. It's been great, and we'll make sure to post all your links and things, so that people can look up what you're up to and hopefully get involved as a mentor or a mentee or any other.
Yeah, and definitely promote it. We're always looking for more mentees, mentors, so we've got a sign up on our Instagram, so if anyone is looking for mentors, send them our way.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll make sure we do. Well, thanks so much, Emilia. That was great. Cheers.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Bye.
Bye.